So excited to be back at the virtual roundtable after a few weeks off. We had a wonderful time early August celebrating our 100th episode of the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series, and we are poised to bring you so much more of this incredible dialogue, these wonderful leaders to you all on a week-by-week basis. So we're kicking off season 4 here of the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series, and I've got two of the best in the learning and development and people development realm for us to really start this new dialogue and this new discussion for season 4. And we'll do a couple of introductions here in just a moment. But I want to welcome everybody to the Navigating Now virtual roundtable. We are so fortunate to have the community of clients and friends and family and partners join us every week for these very important discussions on how we build and develop successful organizations and teams. Particularly, we want to thank our LinkedIn community. We are fortunate to go live to LinkedIn every Thursday, and we really appreciate everybody's engagement, involvement, and even some of the great feedback that we've gotten over the course of the last 3 years of the Navigating Now platform. And we also want to welcome those folks that are tuning in via YouTube and Facebook. These are platforms that we're excited to grow as we continue to build the Navigating Now platform. So without further ado, today, the focus is really on building and leading great people initiatives with impact. And we know that this is such an important topic for us learning and development leaders, us HR leaders, and really for any unique individual who is at the helm of building and developing teams. Our ability to invest in our people is greater, is higher today than it ever has been before. But our responsibility of doing it in a informed and an effective manner is also just as critical as it's ever been. And so we wanted to bring to the table a leader in really understanding the ability to grow and develop learning and development. And that is Adam Fridman. He is the CEO and founder of a growing organization by the name of Prohabits. It's a 5-year-old employee data platform that's focused on creating meaningful insights and nudges that allow companies to make their employee data actionable. So Adam, thank you so much for joining today, and welcome to the roundtable.
It's great to be here. Congrats, you guys, on 100 episodes. Amazing.
Thank you so much. And we're so fortunate to have you a part of 101. We are also joined by my esteemed colleague, Grift. He's a VP here at Thoughttium. He's becoming more of a regular face of the Navigating Now roundtable, which is super exciting because Grift also brings such a wealth of knowledge and experience in designing and delivering great learning experiences. So Grift, welcome back to the table and welcome to season 4.
Yeah, great to be back. Excited to chat here with Adam, and some lofty words and expectations you're throwing out there. I don't know if the best or the brightest is the right way to describe it, but let's call it the most passionate, most enthusiastic.
Okay, I love that. Yeah, I'll take passion and enthusiasm over accolades any day. So thank you for being both of those, Grift. So let's dive in. This discussion is really around how we can think differently about people initiatives, how we can design and deliver great people initiatives. And Adam, I know you have a real passion around making sure that those investments are realized by way of generating great insights and great engagement with our people initiatives. So we're going to tackle this conversation in 3 parts. We're going to do a little bit of a state of the union of people initiatives and how we develop for them. We're also going to talk then a little bit about how our roles as learning and development leaders play a part in developing great learning culture and a culture of development with people. And then we're going to look to the future. So as learning professionals, as HR professionals, what should we be thinking about as we develop more opportunities for our people to grow both in and outside of their roles? So Adam, we'd love to start with you. First and foremost, tell us a little bit about Prohabits. Tell us what you're focused on as an organization, and maybe share a little bit around some of the focused areas that you all have in building people initiatives today.
Great questions. And I want to make one clarification. I see myself as an entrepreneur. You said an L&D expert. By no means do I see myself as an expert. I am a facilitator of the conversations and a champion of our vision. And I will start, but you guys please navigate me. Once we start talking about a vision, it requires a certain level of suspension from the current reality, and sometimes I drift all the way out there. But I'll start with something that Andre, our CEO, actually, that's coming in, and we'll be announcing it here shortly. He talks about, how powerful it is to start the conversation with every organization around the goals. What is the goal of the organization? I often have heard L&D professionals discuss their initiatives in a silo, often even self-referring to those initiatives as check the box. Over the last year, there's been a clear pattern of more and more L&D leaders gaining the seat at the executive table, or perhaps beyond. They're not just at the executive table, they're being tasked with the largest challenges that the organizations are tackling. And why is that happening today? And you said, Anthony, what is the current state? It's a mess. I'm in conversations every day with leaders across organizations, both here and globally. It doesn't matter the role within the organization. I think we should just take a moment and take the workplace aside, just park, and ask, what is the state of humanity today? Right? What's happening as we look at the world of economics and health and politics? As we look at our world working remotely, what has that done? How many now have a barking dog because Amazon delivery just arrived, right? You're thinking about kids. You've got a laundry machine that's beeping. Our worlds have become somewhat of a mess. And what is that impacting? Everything. Name a goal within the organization it's not impacting, whether it's performance-based or it is people-based. So I'll pause there, you guys. Let's do back and forth, because as you can see, once I start, it's hard to stop.
Yeah, there are no conversations too high level for this space particularly. And Grift, I'm just curious as to kind of your reactions to Adam's sentiment around the reality of the state of the union today.
Yeah, first off, everything Adam said, I mean, I think it's really well positioned to remember that when we talk about people initiatives, they are for people and they are built by people. And so everything about them involves people. And, I think as I look at the last 3 years or so, Adam mentioned the sort of the seat or the orientation of learning and development more broadly shifting. It definitely feels like it's shifted very quickly. And when quick shifts happen, it tends to happen where the shift happens and maybe the person is not yet ready for said shift. And so what I think we're seeing a lot is that a lot of new things are being asked of people who are responsible for, frankly, large budgets. And they don't necessarily know what to do, but they know they need to do something. And so there's a lot of this do something out there. A lot of frantic nature of doing something. Maybe I heard about a really great trend. I'm going to jump on this one, or I heard about a really, really strong trend. I need to jump on this one. I think one of the things that Adam mentioned that I think if you take nothing else away from a conversation like this, it's just to remember that learning and development is for people, and therefore it should be totally intertwined with the goals of the organization. And one of those goals of the organization should always be creating a great culture where people can learn and do the best work of their lives. And so remembering that goal, hopefully at least at a starting point, makes you much more excited to jump into what then become the right trends for us as a business to start to invest in. What are our blind spots? But I do, it definitely is messy, and it's not pretty. And I think we're just continuing to see that while 2020 felt like the craziest year on record, 2021 felt pretty chaotic as well. And 2022 is feeling somewhat similar, albeit with different types of complexity. I think this is the new normal we're in. And we have to come to kind of face to face with it and recognize that that learning is here as a very integral part of organizations to stay for the foreseeable future.
You know what I think, Griff? It'd be really cool to unpack the intertwined nature of learning to business objectives, to performance. That is a tall order. Organizations are not set up, at least from my perspective, for those functions to collaborate fully. Right? And I often think about analogs. What other categories emerged and how did they emerge? right? You and I yesterday were discussing, how did marketing emerge as a field? They were order takers in the beginning, right? The entire field of marketing, when it began, here's your budget, here are the ads, now the revenue. When you ask a marketer today to describe their world, the first words are going to be data-driven. Data-driven is how you become effective at what you do, right? So if L&D is looking to become intertwined and be at the executive table, what are the tools they need in order for them to be effective?
Yeah. Yeah. What are the tools, and then what are the things that they need to be able to do so that they can utilize those tools most effectively? And I'm pretty excited about what Prohabits might offer to be able to sit
Yeah.
in that space between.
Yeah. So I'd love to go there next. I'm a big fan of starting with the kind of wide angle lens and a little bit of just this acknowledgement of where we're at in the world and the circles of context that are constantly surrounding us as learning professionals and leaders. I think, Grift, your point of understanding that these programs are built for people and by people is a reminder that we can give ourselves almost every day. 5 years ago, Adam, you started a company by the name of Prohabits, and I assume that much like what we do here at Thoughtium, part of your vision is starting to make a little bit of sense of or organizing this chaotic world of learning and development. What was your angle? How did you come into this kind of marketplace? And tell us a little bit about Prohabits and some of the opportunities that it is meeting in today's marketplace.
It is certainly an unconventional journey. For 5 years prior, I was part of an agency that I founded, Madly, digital agency. And about 5 years into it, we were curious to unpack the idea of storytelling. Where do stories come from? How do companies tell stories? And I was a contributing writer for Inc. I interviewed a few hundred folks, whether it's Simon Sinek, thought leaders, to Fortune 500 executives. And I emerged with this clear pattern. Every leader talked about purpose, values, cultures, desired behaviors. That was kind of table stakes. But a portion of them would say, how do we go beyond the letters on the walls? How do we go beyond moments, town halls, workshops, webinar speakers? And we launched a response to that problem. We realized these were big things, and common sense isn't common action. How do we distill it down to something very small that individuals could do? Call them micro actions. We now call them nudges. So our vision was to create positive change within organizations by helping organizations bring to life their ambitious goals, starting with culture, purpose, and values. And over these 5 years, we aim to make our nudges smarter. Right? That was the big question. How do we make them smarter? And the more we thought over the last year about the world of marketing and data, the more it became clear. The smartest nudge is rooted in understanding the individual, right? Understanding their experience. The only way to understand the employee experience is through understanding the technologies that the individual uses, through data. We see a world where every organization is going to make employee data actionable, just like every organization makes customer data actionable. Do you imagine an organization today where you say, hey, what's your data around customers? And they say, no, we just, we do a thing, and then we hope that thing sticks. Right? That does not happen. So we are introducing the world's first EDP, employee data platform, that in some ways functions similarly to a CDP, customer data platform. Is going to ingest the data and allow the organization to capture unprecedented insights and make it actionable. And I can keep going and going, you guys, as you know. Love these questions.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very specific and clear vision. The application of which I'm excited to maybe get into a little bit, but maybe I'd like to hear from Grift as a practitioner of learning and development. As you've gotten closer to the power of leveraging insights and data to make learning experiences more meaningful, and also the power of thoughtful and inspired nudges along the way, what are some of the gaps that we see as designers of learning and development that we are really looking for solutions for or unlocks for?
Yeah. Well, I want to maybe start by just acknowledging that the way Adam talks about their vision gets me pretty amped up, just in terms of what might allow the world of learning to do. But I also think it's really important in a conversation like this to just demonstrate a little empathy for folks who are responsible for executing people initiatives. And I just frankly think because of the way businesses have been run for years and years and decades and so on, learning and development doesn't get nearly the leeway for driving results that any other function receives, right? If you just like case in point example, maybe like a head of sales does one particular thing different with coaching techniques, right? And all of a sudden we see a bump in revenue. There are a lot of folks who are out there who are totally comfortable saying one-to-one correlation. That change in coaching techniques is directly related to the drive in revenue. Maybe not the perfect example, but you don't necessarily see that same kind of leeway given to learning and development professionals, right? We have just instituted a brand new style of learning engagement, and we see business results move in the right direction. How often do we say learning and development is the primary driver of those? And so what I think is really exciting in the technology and the vision that Prohabits is laying out is it does really two things for me. One is that it extends learning experiences outside of classrooms, outside of instances, and really gets into this idea of making learning an everyday, every moment thing. And by doing so, you start to then see that results that are going one way or another, you can really strongly correlate either, in both positively and negatively. That if things are going the way that we want them to go with the way that we're running our people initiatives, we can really start to pat the back of the people who are responsible for them. And so I think for me, what gets me so excited about an EDP that Adam and his team are envisioning is to really champion the fact that learning and development should be considered a huge driver of business results. And this is a way for us to really paint a super clear picture.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that starting with empathy and understanding that, as learning and development professionals, we are all focused on increasing outcomes. We may not oftentimes have the answer. And for example, the ability to measure the impact of our efforts has been an age-old challenge that we have been, trying to solve for decades. But I think part of this discussion is really around ensuring that what we're developing is being not only measured, but we're leveraging data to enhance and customize our solutions in ways that really matter for our learners. And so, Adam, tell us a little bit about how Prohabits works. And I'd also love to understand what you talk about these smart nudges that allow companies to make their programming more actionable. What are some of the things that your platform and your work? What are some of the most common nudges that you're making in these people initiatives?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll start with how it works. And I want to clarify, anytime I bring up employee data, a lot of the folks in learning, HR, other functions, they can have one of these reactions. Did you say employee data? Uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. I am not sure we can work with you guys. So I want to clarify one of the things why now is the right time for an EDP is because lots of advancements in Microsoft ecosystem. There are certain elements to what Power BI, Power Apps can do today that are making EDP possible, but the important element to keep in mind is that all of the employee data within our platform, it stays inside the cloud of our clients. We never take important and sensitive employee information out. So for anyone listening in, I just knew they would have an allergic reaction to the concept of an employee data. And foundationally, what do? Well, we break the silos of your employee data and we create a single source of truth. We bring together a number of different employee data technologies. Let's say your payroll system. Let's say you're using a ADP, but you're also using Microsoft Teams, and there's data around collaboration, and you use Lettuce for your performance. So our step one is to bring the data together. Our step two is to ask the question, what are the goals of the organization? Actual goals with metrics, not cloudy goals. And let's say that as an example is patient outcomes. Okay, the next step is to look at your employee data to identify opportunities. Are patient outcomes focused on regional concerns? Is it focused on specific shifts? Does it depend on tenure within the organization, the role within the hospital system? Our function of an EDP is to identify opportunities to then create audiences. And the next step is to meet them where they are. We talk about empathy, but when we communicate as an organization, it's usually something generic. We do better with customers. You go on Amazon, you don't buy those shoes, they're going to follow you around. Those shoes that you liked are going to pursue you. But within an organization, every message you're receiving is generic. So the goal now is for that audience, in the pursuit of that specific goal, creating nudges and meeting them where they are, as I mentioned, is critical. Our EDP is able to deliver to email, our nudges to SMS or Microsoft Teams.
And are you working, directly with, let's call it, designers of these programs? Who do you typically work with to identify the objectives, make sure that the programming is mapped to those objectives, and then ultimately measuring the impact?
So I'd say the majority of our conversations are with L&D, but it's not exclusively in L&D. We have seen now the pain surrounding the challenge of activating people and creating change. The pain is real. It's getting the attention of every department. I can't imagine there's a C-level currently relaxed about some of the challenges they're seeing. This could be operational excellence. It could be the employee engagement. It could be turnover. Spoke to a CTO where he was discussing simple delivery times for their technology sprints. And how do you bring the agile approach? How do you improve teamwork? How do you improve collaboration? All of these are operational questions. And Anthony, when you mentioned, what are the goals? Where are you approaching it? This was actually at some point over the last year a real big challenge for us, because we can solve any goal. Any goal that can be helped by your people, we can help you move. So what do we do with that? Do we pick one area? Do we focus on L&D only? Do we see L&D becoming kind of like a CMO function in the future, where they have technical capabilities, they have marketing-like capabilities, video production offices? Is that the future, or is that the chief people officer suite, or is the CHRO suite about to create this new category? And that's what I want to call it. People initiatives is the category that's going to have functional and technical participants. There's going to be folks like yourselves. We're super excited at the possibility to work with Thodium. What you guys, the knowledge that you bring, the functional areas that you bring to how you're thinking about impacting the goals is incredible. Our focus is on technology. We want our EDP to give a single source of truth, provide smart nudges to meet them where they are. And we want to be the data nerds. We want to be looking at, when was your last one-on-one? Are you busy? Have you been sick for the last 2 weeks and you came to work for 10 meetings straight? If the organization cares, maybe that's the moment your manager should be notified to say, hey, Anthony was sick for 2 weeks, 10 meetings in a row. Anthony could benefit from you reaching out and saying, how are you doing?
Yeah. I love that. And I love this challenge of kind of narrowing the gap between the way that we are, the way that we exist as consumers in, let's call it, our personal lives, and the way that we exist as employees within organizations. This is a conversation we're constantly having, particularly in the L&D space. Why, in a world where I have the access to the world's information at my fingertips, I can go deep and learn about a specific skill or competency outside of work, whether I want to learn a new language or I want to learn to play the piano. I have unlimited amounts of resources. They are all backed by data. That data is informing a more holistic and customized view of who I am as a consumer. And that data engine is feeding back, valuable information and insights and even nudges to me as a consumer. In the corporate world, it's almost like we're working within these fixed walls of old platforms that are not built on the back of solid insights and data, that are almost modular in nature in terms of the way our organizations are designed. L&D becomes almost the last line of communication, which puts them in a position of creating standard off-the-shelf offerings that are out of date and are not informed by the actual consumers of. And how do we bridge that gap? Because as a learner outside of work, I expect this information and this data and these insights to be nudging me and to be encouraging me and to be, steepening that learning curve, if you will. But I don't experience that within the corporate workplace. And Grift, I'm curious as to your thoughts in terms of how we can potentially bridge that gap, and how the development experience within the workplace can become more like the way that we learn and develop as individuals outside of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think there are a lot of things that still remain true with what we ask of people initiatives today, which are they need to have fantastic empathy in the building process. They need to have really defined, clear objectives of what we're trying to drive toward. They should be aligned to the results of that the business is trying to drive. And they should be giving people the tools they need to build careers at that company, right? I mean, I think we can all say that there's a pretty large a talent problem going around, whether it's attrition or whether it's the fact that there have been a number of layoffs. Like, organizations are going through a pretty crazy talent cycle right now. I see it a little bit, as Adam is talking about this, the visual of, if you ever see like companies' customer journey maps, right? They're never this like clear, linear, goes to the website, finds the right product, hits click, puts their information in, we're done. Really, it's like goes to the information, scrolls up and down, goes and does something else, comes back, puts it in their cart, says, I don't know if that really fits my budget, takes it out of their cart, puts another thing in their cart. And so you have all these different touch points in a customer journey. And if you think about how we sometimes put out an employee journey going through a learning initiative, it is very much that systematic process. Someone will join a kickoff. Someone will go to a workshop. Someone will have a coaching session. And it's really bound by the limits of time and scale. What I think is really exciting about what Prohabits is trying to achieve, and frankly, I think what us who are maybe on the crazy gene in this particular way of looking at the future, that you take time, you take the scale, not necessarily out of the equation, but you don't make it the number one variable. And I think is really exciting about the way Adam talks about Prohabits vision. It's this idea of meeting people where they are. How can we actually make learning experiences that shift back and forth with what someone really needs? And both from the concept of skill and capability development, but also well-being, also mental health, also relationship with your manager and your stakeholders. I mean, how great would it be to have something that is not shadowing, but giving you what you need as you go through this crazy up and down journey that is your own employment. And I think that's what's really exciting, is you see it more as an opportunity of what we will help you to do, as opposed to any kind of policing technique, because the way that you'll be able to grow as an employee, but frankly, as a person and individual, I think that's the true unlock. And that's what just gets me super excited.
Yeah, I love that, Grift. And the analogy or the reality of the fact that our learning and development experience is a journey. That journey should be supported by tools and resources that are integrated, that make sense, and that, of course, map to the company's objectives, but also that are being informed by real-time data on our preferences, how we're showing up to these learning experiences, how we're coming out of them. And I think even just the simple exercise to get tactical as a learning professional is to truly map out that, quote, customer journey for our learners. How often are we challenging ourselves to get in the room and to really truly map out end to end what that experience looks like? And that could be for something as simple as a national workshop with a sales team that's coming in to town for 2 or 3 days. What is that total journey? And how do we extend the learning tail? All of these questions come together and should make a very, consistent and cohesive and integrated learning experience. And it sounds like, that's really your focus and your mission at Prohabits, Adam. So we just appreciate those insights. Before we wrap things up, I want to make sure that we all take, kind of stand at the doorstep of what's happening today in people initiatives and look up and out. And as we look at the future of people initiatives, Adam, I'm curious, what are some of the things that you see that are working today that you could see us doing more of in the future? Or, what's maybe coming down the road that we're not doing today, but you just have a feeling in 12 to 18 months, it's going to be a real reality for us learning and development professionals?
I'm going to cheat and do both of those questions.
Great.
What are we doing? What are we doing now? I really think because of the pressure on the talent, because of the turnover challenges, performance challenges, I think the role of people and subsequently this new category, people initiatives, is getting a lot of attention. Things are moving very fast. In progressive organizations, if you're an L&D leader, if your executives are not having conversations of how can you help in a very direct way to impact business outcomes, you're probably not an organization that's responding fast enough to what's happening, and there'll be other challenges. So I hope that pressure doesn't change, because some of the discussions have now shifted to layoffs, and I hope it's not going to happen, but I can imagine there'll be shift in how they're thinking about these challenges. In order to answer the second question, 18 months out, I certainly think this new category will have a new functional, fully staffed teams at this executive table, and we're going to see a day when marketing wasn't at the executive, sales wasn't at the executive table. They were just one of the departments. It's going to 18 months from now, in progressive organizations, their entire executive suite will now have a new seat with its own set of tools, processes, capabilities, and the ability to impact the bottom line.
I love that. And just appreciate kind of your targeted approach. Grift, as you look out, 8 months, I'd love to have you maybe put some perspective on what's working today and what will we see more of.
Well, I hate to have to follow that because I felt like that was very well said. But I think I'm a very visual person, so I tend to think today what I see in general, learning professionals doing a really good job of is juggling the fact that they are whether or not they're at the strategic table, they're at the middle of a lot of different stakeholders that rely on them for things. And so they are having to constantly compromise, realign, understand just the wants, the needs, the desires of so many different business partners that they have. And that's a real challenge. So, I say hats off to people who can sit in that, because a lot of times, that role it can be a really frustrating one. And I think people, in the learning and development space are doing a good job handling that amidst all of this other tumultuous nature that's going on. I see that same role being there, but say in 18 to 24 months, if some of this stuff that Adam and I are talking about starts to come to fruition, which I truly believe it can with the right belief, I see it less of them just kind of being a pass through and making sure things are sort of all aligned, and see more of push out. Being able to be more of a nucleus that spreads wealth of knowledge, spreads wealth of information, drives action. And that's so exciting, right? Because no longer is it just being at the strategic table. You are actually pushing the strategy because it's not meeting the needs of your employees. And then frankly, not meeting the needs of your customers, because we know your employees are who delight your customers. And so I see that as being the true turnaround. It's not so much being at the table, but now it's being at the table and you are the person sort of guiding the conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And I'll kind of build on that in terms of what one of the hypotheses that I have. I think as our workforce becomes more transient and people take more control of their own development, their own career paths, which we've seen just in spades over the course of the last 2 years, we as learning and development professionals are going to need to become, as Grift mentioned, more facilitators of great learning experiences and less of the content experts. We're going to have real mastery in how we engage people in their own self-exploration. People are going to have almost a BYO approach to their own development, because if they're not getting it from the previous organization or they're going to get it elsewhere. And we have this opportunity to really facilitate that own kind of self-discovery that most people have really taken charge of over the course of the last few years. And the only way we can do that, we can no longer hide behind a core set of learning modules or even a particular discipline of expertise. We have to know about everything that our learners are involved in and are curious about, and are the new required skills that they're developing both in and outside of work, that will need to be informed by data. And that it will be, great insights from meaningful data that will allow us to meet our learners specifically where they're at, even if it's not smack dab in the middle of a formatted program that we've put together for their first 90 days. And to me, that's really exciting because that challenges me to kind of step outside of what I know, and even some of my strengths as a learning professional. And really, as Grift and Adam, you've both mentioned, really, really connect with and empathize with our end learners, understanding, what their needs are and where they exist. So just an incredible discussion here. Adam, thank you so much for jumping into the discussion. Thank you so much for the spirited conversations and even the partnership that we've been developing here over the course of the last couple of weeks. I want to maybe end with a quick lightning round, Adam, that I know we haven't prepped you for, and that's by design. Are you ready?
Think so. Let's do it.
I knew you'd be game. So, Adam, tell our listeners, what are you reading, watching, or listening to that you're really geeking out on right now?
That is a good question. So I'm now rereading some of the books that inspired me to start this journey. The Positive Psychology by Sean Aker, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, Man's Search for Meaning. When my personal growth discovery began 6 or 7 years ago, these were some of the more impactful books, and I'm finding myself inspired to reread.
I love that. This is almost a dangerous question for somebody like Adam, who thinks at every altitude, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So, Adam, when you are at your office or your home office and you want a little bit of a break from the focus work, and you maybe look outside of a window and you're just kind of gazing out, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking about?
Sometimes the natural impulse is negative thoughts. Things that have happened, the challenges. We had a really difficult move a year ago, so sometimes it go back there if I'm not intentional. When I'm intentional, I love to dream about what's possible. I just pretend, I can invent a new world, 3, 4, 5 years out. What would that world look like? And it especially is interesting when I have conversations one of the conversations this week was, how do you rethink the public sector, the government workforce globally? And we had a country in mind, and the impact on how many people this program would touch is mind-blowing. And that's where my mind goes. How do we create positive change at scale? How do I leave a legacy?
I love that. And I also want to just thank you for your authenticity in that response. Seldom do we get folks that share some of the reality of what we think about as business leaders, or even as humans, as we kind of lift our heads up. So very much appreciate that answer. If you could travel to the past or the future, you had to pick one, where would you go and what would you do?
I think I want to go hang out with Maslow. I think it'd be just a really fun conversation, where he's from, just about his family. I can only imagine at that time people thought he was crazy. Can you imagine discussing some of the concepts that we now take for granted from a leadership perspective back in the day?
Yeah.
When you're talking to, hey, Ford, congratulations, they lowered the number of hours, right? Like, I'm not saying that was around that time, but the operational thinking was rooted in some of those disciplines. And here is Maslow having a conversation of, how do we thrive for our potential? So I'd love to know how that kind of thinking at that time frame continues to be inspired, and how do you create impact with that?
What a dinner that would be. I'd love to be, a seat at the table, yes, but like I'd probably be the busboy in that conversation as well too, like if I needed to be. Super, super interesting. Last question for you, Adam. Think about something that you admire about yourself and fill in the blank for this question. If the world were more like me, it would be what?
Crazy. I mean, I don't know if I could work with a bunch of me's. I empathize with people who have to work with me on a day-to-day basis, especially when I get into inspired state. So yes, I'll stick with that, because vision, when you start to think about a future state, kind of by definition, you're a little crazy, because you are now suspended from reality in many ways. And when you give yourself the full permission to do that, your mind drifts. I actually have, on days like today, after this podcast, I'm going to need a minute before I return to the family with our kids, because they start asking me regular questions and I start answering in this mindset, and they go, wait, what, Dad? What did you say? And I'm like, guys, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to need 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to come back and I'll return back to normal.
Yeah. I so can appreciate that, your family or your children just really wanting to know what's for dinner. And it's like, sometimes it's hard to switch that context. And so I can appreciate the nice long walk. And, here is to the crazy ones. Adam, we're just so thrilled to have you a part of the Navigating Now community. And more specifically, we're thrilled to continue to explore the future of people initiatives and developing, our organizations and human performance at large. These discussions are oftentimes the foundation of really great work, and we're excited to do that work with you.
To the crazy ones, Anthony, Grift, this was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Adam. All right.
Absolutely.
So as we close out for this episode 101, Grift and I would love to just say thank you to all who have joined our discussion today. You can really look forward to more discussions like this on a week-to-week basis. In season 4, we're focused on more of some of the great stuff that we've been able to bring over the course of the first 100 episodes. We're also looking for new voices to step into the discussion. We're looking to do more in-person interviews, because we know for the few times that we've been able to go on site, whether that be within one of our small business communities or out in the local community, we just get so much joy and energy from those discussions. So, we welcome feedback for those that are part of our inner circle and those that are part of our community. If there are topics you want to hear about, if there are leaders you want to hear from, we absolutely welcome that feedback. We are just so excited to continue to pour into you all, our community, on a week-to-week basis here at Thoughttium. You can see this episode and any previous episode at thoughttium.com/live. Grift, as always, it's so great sharing this table with you. I'll let you say goodbye, and then we'll say goodbye to the folks.
Great conversation. As Adam mentioned, going to need to take a little bit of a walk here to get ready for my next meeting. But really, really great. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you got some good stuff out of it.
Yep. Thank you, Grift. Appreciate your leadership. We'll see everybody next Thursday at 3